He was a political wonder child in Austria, and now Europe wants to know whether he is also a comeback kid. Hello, I'm Adam Jasser. Today I go on the record with Sebastian Kurz, who 7 years ago became Austria's Prime Minister at the age of 31 and then crashed out of politics amid scandal. For 4 long years he vanished into the political wilderness while embarking on a successful business career and seeking to clear his name. This May, he won an appeal against a perjury conviction. So, is the man who was once called a mini-Trump coming back to govern Austria? And how would he tackle Europe's security predicament?
Sebastian Kurz entered Austrian politics as a teenager, became foreign minister at 27, Conservative Party leader soon after, and prime minister or chancellor in 2017 at the age of 31. He governed first in coalition with the far-right Freedom Party, then with the Greens, navigating Austria through the refugee crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. His blend of pro-European posture and tough stance on migration earned him admiration among European conservatives and sharp criticism from the left. His detractors celebrated when his administration became embroiled in scandal. His first cabinet collapsed in 2019 after his coalition partner was recorded allegedly soliciting political favours from a fake Russian oligarch's niece. 2 years later, prosecutors accused Kurz of buying favourable media coverage and manipulating polling using public funds. He resigned in October 2021. In February 2024, Kurz was convicted of perjury for misleading a parliamentary inquiry. He received an 8-month suspended sentence. But in May 2025, a Vienna appeals court overturned the ruling.
I have been confronted with accusations for years. There have been numerous court dates and an enormous amount of confrontation with these accusations. I believe you have all followed how much this was celebrated, and now everything has collapsed on itself.
After exiting politics, Kurz has re-emerged as a tech entrepreneur with geopolitical reach. He joined Thiel Capital, the venture fund run by Silicon Valley billionaire and Donald Trump ally Peter Thiel, as a global strategist. In 2023, he co-founded Dream Security, an AI-powered cybersecurity firm working for governments. By February 2025, Dream had reached unicorn status with a $1 billion valuation. The acquittal removes the main legal obstacle to any political comeback for the 38-year-old. Polls show most Austrians oppose his return, and Kurz appears focused on his business ventures. But, as everyone knows, politics is a long game, and those who have tasted power then lost it, like Donald Trump and current German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, often find a way back.
Mr. Chancellor, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
When you were in power, Europe's security situation was fragile, but it wasn't as dangerous as it is now after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So we're at the point where a US general in command of NATO troops in Europe is saying Europe needs to get ready for war with Russia and potentially with China attacking Taiwan at the same time in 2027. What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, I hope that that's not going to happen. But of course, you're absolutely right that when I was in office, the security situation looked totally different. The war of aggression in Ukraine, it caused enormous suffering, and hundred thousands of innocent people were killed. So if you ask me, the situation looks totally different, not only for Ukraine, but for us in the European Union. And so I think that it makes absolutely sense that also now the decision has been made to increase the spending on defense in order to be prepared. But of course, I hope that it's just to be prepared and that the situation doesn't get worse than it is already.
Well, how do you see the diplomacy around Ukraine? If the war scenario is to be avoided for Europe, still the question of Ukraine remains. So the question is, how do you see the diplomacy? President Trump seems to have hardened his position on Russia after Vladimir Putin basically did not respond to Trump's peace plans. You met Putin personally back in 2018. You also know President Trump because you met him, as I remember, a year later. And you were on good terms with the Ukrainians. So do you belong to those who argue Putin will never agree to a reasonable peace deal? Or do you think he will be forced finally to accept that Ukraine is slipping away from his grip?
Look, I hope that this is going to happen, and I hope that there will be a peace deal in the end, a peace deal that works for Ukraine and which has to be decided by Ukraine. But if you ask me, I think the situation is still extremely difficult. I had a lot of hope at the beginning of the year, and I thought that probably with all the push from Trump and the new administration, there will be some movements in the right direction. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. So if you ask me, I think it's very difficult to say.
Why didn't it work out? Is it Putin, or do you think Ukrainians share part of the blame?
It's definitely Putin because Trump was criticized for being so open and for being so friendly towards Russia. But what Trump wanted to do is he wanted to bring peace. He wanted to find a solution. And I think he gave Putin a good exit scenario. But unfortunately, there was no movement at all from Putin and the Russian side. And that's also the reason why the US has changed the position on Russia, and why now Ukraine will have a lot of support from the US side. Unfortunately, we are in a situation that still there is no willingness for peace from the Russian side. And to be honest, I had a lot of hope at the beginning of the year. And now I would say I see the situation much more negative than a few months ago.
Going back to Europe's security and this potential risk of war in 2027 or later or earlier, because as you rightly point out, this is just speculation in some sense. But you, in your youth, you did military service in Austria, compulsory. Do you think compulsory military service is something all European countries should adopt now in this new situation?
Well, if you ask me, the 27 member states of the European Union are very different. They are different in size, different when it comes to defense spending, and also they have a different history. So I think the system that we have in Austria makes a lot of sense for us, and I was always in favor of this system, but I don't think that there's a need to give advice to other countries. Austria is a small country and militarily not comparable with the bigger powers in Europe, so definitely no need for advice from our side. But in general, I think it's good that defense is now back on the agenda and that there is a willingness from all sides in the European Union and also within the member states that everybody contributes whatever is necessary.
Well, I understand your caution when it comes to other countries, giving advice to other countries. How about Austria then? You know, Austria is not in NATO. Fellow former neutral countries, Finland and Sweden, decided to join, abandoning decades of neutrality. Do you think this would be the right path for Austria also to consider joining NATO?
I don't see this decision in Austria. I think because of our history and many other reasons, I think that there will be no change on the position of Austria. But of course, there's a strong cooperation within the European Union and also, of course, in peacekeeping missions, sometimes also under the leadership of NATO.
Right, but as you know, Finland was saying pretty much what you're saying now 10 years before joining NATO. So the question is long term, if you were, just looking at it not from, let's say, today's perspective of what's possible inside the Austrian political system, but as a sort of person who used to forge ideas. Is this something that you personally think would be desirable in the longer term?
Look, I think, to be honest, from my perspective, as a European, I'm happy that there's a strong alignment in NATO. I'm happy that there's a good cooperation between NATO and also neutral countries like Austria. But when it comes to the Austrian situation, I think I gave you my answer. I don't see a change here on the Austrian position. And I think from a personal perspective that it also makes sense to have some small neutral countries in the world that can probably be helpful in other areas, like in peacekeeping missions where Austria contributes a lot. So from my perspective, the neutrality for Austria, Switzerland, and some other countries definitely makes sense.
I think you're being cautious here, because I have a sense that with your experience, with your outlook, you would actually support that if it came to a vote in Austrian parliament to change the constitution.
Of course, you have to think that I'm cautious because you're Polish. You have a totally different history. You have a totally different geographic situation. And of course, I totally understand your view and your perspective. Look, I think that's why the European Union is such an interesting union, because we are a union of 27 member states, which are quite different, which have a very different history, which have different geographic situations, and especially because of.
Pardon me for interrupting you. War is very close to Austria.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look in miles or kilometers, it's not that far away.
Of course. But if you look at the situation in the neighboring states of Russia and all the aggression that we witnessed there, I think we both agree that the situation being a direct neighbor, like in the Baltics, is a totally different situation than for Switzerland or Austria.
Right. Well, let's move to the subject of Europe now. And, in January 2016, you gave an interview to Die Welt, I think this was, when you said, it is understandable that many politicians are afraid of ugly pictures when it comes to border security. However, we cannot simply cede the responsibilities we have regarding our borders to Turkey because we don't want to get our hands dirty. Ugly pictures are unavoidable. Do you feel vindicated that these days this would not be a controversial statement? On the contrary, this has become the mainstream narrative, if you will.
Yeah, thanks God, positions within the European Union have changed. And when I was foreign minister in the year 2015 and the migration crisis started, I was criticized every single day. To be honest, I think that my positions were not far right or right wing. They were just normal positions, because from my perspective, it's impossible for a European Union without borders internally to have no external borders. And I think the year 2015 and 2016 showed that this policy of Angela Merkel's Wir schaffen das, the policy of the open borders, is something that just did not work out. So if you ask me, I'm happy that positions within the European Union have changed, that the wordings have changed. But besides the wordings, I think what really is needed is facts, and that means
so you think the policies are not there yet? The policies are not there yet. You think?
I don't think so. From my perspective, what is really needed is securing our external borders. The idea of a European Union without internal borders is a great one, but this idea only works out if you have strong external borders, and we are still not there yet, and that's a huge problem for the European Union. That's a huge problem for the member states, and you see that member states are starting border controls within the European Union again. just because of the fact that external borders are not working, and that is not the idea of the European Union.
Right. You were once an admirer of the Australian system of handling migration. Do you still believe that this is the right path for Europe?
I'm still, because look, the whole problem with illegal migration will always be huge if migrants can decide in which country they apply for asylum. So if you let somebody who comes to the European Union decide to start in Greece and then go through all the Balkan countries till you are in the heart of Europe, and then to decide if you apply for asylum in Austria, Germany, or probably in Sweden, because the social welfare systems are the most attractive there. If such decisions are possible, then you will always have a huge number of people trying to come illegally to the European Union. So if you ask me, of course, I'm still a fan of the Australian system. And I think if it's too attractive to go illegally to countries like Austria, Germany, Sweden, with strong social welfare states, if that is possible, then of course the number of people who jump will always stay huge.
Do you believe that Russia and also some other external actors, including the far right in the United States, the MAGA movement, are exaggerating some of these migration issues to divide the EU and create panic among the citizens? Because ultimately, it seems everyone is interested in weakening the EU.
No, I think, first of all, you should not compare Russia and the Republicans in the US.
I'm not comparing. I'm saying they are sharing a certain narrative about migration blowing the EU apart.
I don't agree on that. Look, if you walk around in some European capitals, yeah, and you see anti-Semitism rising, if you walk around in European capitals and you see that the security situation is getting worse, yeah, if you look at the number of children at school, in our case, who do not have German as their mother tongue, and you see these numbers increasing all the time, then you will find out that the countries are changing, the societies are changing, and that the number of people who have to be integrated is just too high.
Right, so you're saying the problem is real. The problem is real, and the fact that it's exploited.
The problem is more than real, and I think it's difficult probably to see it the same way from a Polish perspective, because first of all, you don't have similar numbers of migrants coming like we have, and second, most of the migrants you have are from Ukraine at the moment, which is a totally different story.
No, in Poland, Poland is grappling with an issue of migrants from Central Asia, from further east,
of course, as well,
being shipped by Belarus across the Polish border.
Of course as well. But look at the numbers and compare it to the size of the countries. If you have in a small country like Austria, 50, 60, 70, 100,000 people coming illegally a year and applying for asylum, of course that's an issue.
Right.
And it's not because of Russian propaganda or the MAGA movement in the US. It's a real problem for our societies.
But that propaganda is there nevertheless. So even if it's not the reason, it sort of piggybacks on some of these issues. But let's leave this for a moment. Do you believe that there is a risk that some of these tensions linked to migration, to the war in Ukraine, to the fiscal problems the EU has, decision-making process, is this blowing the EU apart or driving the EU apart? What would be your remedy? You are a very creative politician.
I hope not. I hope not, and probably let me conclude with that. First of all, I hope not, and second, I think starting with migration, there is an answer. There is a way out. Yeah, it's keep sticking to the idea of the European Union, the idea of no borders internally and strong external borders. So I think we all know what should be done, and it's just about doing. With Russia, I think you cannot compare these two issues because that's much more difficult. Unfortunately, we are still in a situation that so many people are killed every day because of this war of aggression, and I hope that at a certain point of time there will be movement in Russia, and there will be a solution and a diplomatic solution for this war. I'm still hoping. I was more optimistic at the beginning of the year, but yeah, I hope that at a certain point of time things will change for the better.
I know you need to rush, so at the end I just have to ask you the question that is practically on everybody's mind in Europe. Are you coming back to Austrian politics to try to fix some of those issues?
Look, I was active in Austrian politics for 10 years. I served in the Austrian government for 10 years as foreign minister, then as prime minister. I hope I contributed a lot. And to be honest, I feel very comfortable with all the things I'm doing now. I enjoy being in the private sector.
Again, very diplomatic answer, but do you rule it out?
No, not diplomatic.
Do you rule it out?
No. Yes, I'm happy what...
so you're going on the record saying you're not coming back to Austrian politics or European politics?
Yes, I just wanted to say that before you interrupted me. No,
so you're not going to follow. Look, you're not going to follow Friedrich Merz.
I'm always hesitant to say no. I'm always hesitant to say no to politics because it always creates the feeling that I didn't like it. And the truth is, I always enjoyed it. I think it was a huge privilege to serve my own country, and at the same time I like what I'm doing now. It's a new experience and I pretty much enjoy it.
I can understand that, but look at Friedrich Merz. He was very successful as a businessman and he came back to lead Germany. Shouldn't you follow him?
That's a different story. Thank you very much for the interview.
Chancellor, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching On The Record in our new setting, and see you again in September.